This is SILL Talks, episode 5. In this episode, we'll be taking a critical look at how architectural firms can employ people, the methods that are available to them, the advantages of each method, and what the employer as well as what the employees stand to gain. Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of SILL Talks. SILL Talks is the podcast dedicated to helping architects develop strategies and finding new ways to help grow their business. On SILL Talks, we teach the principles, ideologies, and steps to help architects develop that side of architecture that is rarely talked about or rarely discussed, but is very vital to our business growth. So you can say that SILL Talks is that sweet spot between architecture and business that helps the architect do and focus what he loves the most, which is creating while keeping his light on in the office by building a sustainable and profitable business. I am your host, Egbeyon Leonard, and welcome to SILL Talks. Before I proceed, I just want to use this opportunity to say I am really sorry for staying away this long. It's not usual for me to do this, but your host became a father. And balancing work, family, and all of the in-betweens kind of took me a while to settle in, and I'm back now. I'm back and ready to serve you the juicy contents again. So apologies again. We have a lot of new stuff to dish out, so stay tuned as we delve right in. The title of this episode is Staffing Methods for Architects. Basically, staffing is a major part of any business, and architecture is no different. Staffing simply means how a firm gets people in to do its work for them, how culture is built, basically everything that has to do with people coming into a company and working together. Now, the modalities of how that happens is what we're going to be discussing today. What are the methods? What are the ways that this is done? How does it affect the employer? How does it affect the employee? The different options that are available to architects. I feel that once we're able to break it down to its tiny little parts, each person, whether you're starting out as a graduate architect or you're an intern or you're a firm owner, you will know the best option for you to pick from. Or if you want to combine them, the best way to manage your resources. That is what determines how successful your practice is eventually, how best you're able to manage your resources. And staffing is one of the key areas that determines success in an architectural practice. Staffing is very key because the quality of the staffs you have will most times determine the direction in which your work will go, how fast you're able to deliver, how much work you can take in, and all of that. So we're going to be discussing that briefly, and we'll break it down to how you can get these things done, what are the advantages of having staffs, what are the options for freelancing, and everything in between. So stay tuned, guys, as we'll do justice to this topic. Welcome back, guys. So we have basically 4 options for architects when it comes to staff. And the first one is the full-time employment. The second is the freelancing, right? And the third one is the pay per service. I call it the PPS, right? It's it's an old concept, but in a new way. And then the last but not the least on my list is the loaning method. Now, the loaning method, you find out that it's quite new and it's not been widely accepted, but a couple of people that I know practice it. So let's get started. The full-time employment, it is widely, what is known around the world, where a practice or a business taking someone to work for them on a full-time basis within an agreed time. For example, say 9 to 5. When you say a 9 to 5 job, that is a full-time job, right? You resume in the morning, you close at a specific time in the evening, and you are assigned specific tasks every day to complete. So that's a full-time job. Now, that full-time employment, as in regards to an architectural practice, what does it hold for the employer? So that's what we'll first start with. Basically, the disadvantages of an employer having, that's an architect now, having a full-time employee is that, one, you have to have constant jobs. It is a must, because there's no way you take in someone, at the end of the month, you must pay them a fixed amount of salary, which is due, in line with labor laws and all of that. So, and even if you don't have jobs, at the end of the month, you have to find somewhere to raise money to pay them. So the next one is that you must have specific tasks every single day that they must complete. It is a must, in the sense that if not, they are probably just going to be in your office and wasting time. So the next one after that will be that you must have a space that they come to work. Now with the COVID-19 and everything seems to be changing and people could work from home, but for a full-time employee, you still want to have them under some sort of surveillance where they are keeping your work going on a steady. Then you have to train the staff. With time, it is very important that training of architects in a firm it is scientifically proven, right, that when you invest in your staff as architects, your growth curve is very steep, because it is fast and you are able to impact knowledge in them. Your productivity, comes out better and all of that. So training is very key. And then, of course, the other disadvantage is that you have to now be paying allowances and deductibles and extra benefits you follow. So all of that are kind of, one of the, they are good things, but at the same time, for a firm who's just starting, it might be a disadvantage. And also, as a firm owner, you have to think your way out of financial difficulties by yourself. Because like I said earlier, if your firm is not making money, definitely you still have to pay your staff salaries. It is none of their business how you do it, but if you can get in the job and let them do it, of course, they won't mind. But if there is no job, you still have to think your way out of financial difficulties. And of course, it makes you the risk bearer. The advantages, of having a full-time staff as an employer, the first thing is you constantly have helping hands. It is no joke, because if you have staff in the office, the amount of work you can take in, your capacity increases. So with that, it means that you are calling the shots. You get to build your dream with a team. You can take in as many jobs as, your specialization as you can. And of course, all of this leads to greater financial reward. So that is the advantage for the employer. Now, looking at it from the eyes of the employee, what does it stand to gain to be a full-time staff as an architect? The first thing is that, of course, you get to have paid leaves and allowances, meaning that for a whole year you could go on vacation for say 21 days, and at the end of it all you still get paid for doing, for chilling. So that is one of the advantages. Then of course, because at the end of the month you have some sort of you have a salary structure, you are able to plan yourself, plan your income, your investment and all of that, because it's kind of structured. At the end of the month this will come. So that kind of gives you some level of financial security, because you can plan your salary. Now the disadvantage is that you are stuck with one employer. It might be boring. If there is no work to do, you will just go to work and sit down. Except of course if your contract allows you to have some private projects here and there. But most full-time employers frown at that. So that's that about that. Another one is, because of the way practice is run, sometimes to realize your full potential will be very hard for a full-time employer of architecture. Then your time is not your own. It is hard, but that is the hard ball to swallow. You cannot eat your cake and have it, but sometimes you do, because nowadays there's flexibility in how employees and employer relationship work. Now the next form is the freelancing. The freelancing is the second form of employment or second form of staffing that exists in our architecture space. And this is becoming widely popular with the recent surge in, Internet of Things, how we are able to work more remotely and architects being mobile, meaning that you could be a staff or XYZ company and still work from Kafacha in your living room. So basically what it means is a situation where an individual is not tied to a company but provides services for the company on contract basis. You could be working for XYZ, working for James and Sons, and working for Chair Industries, architectural firm, and still you are not tied to one particular one where you work all around. Now that is what freelancing is. For the employer, what are the advantages of having freelancers as part of his team? The first thing is you pay only for services. That's an advantage. You pay only for services that is rendered to you. Meaning that at the end of the month, if they have not done any work for you, you do not necessarily have to now crack your head and figure out how do I raise money for this person. The work they do for you is what you pay them for. Also, you don't have to pay allowances or extra benefits or paid leave or whatsoever, because it is based on contract. What you do for me, I pay you for. And furthermore, you do not necessarily also have to have a space for them to work from, unlike full employment. This one, you could have as many freelancers as you like on your team, and when the work comes, you call them, they use their resources, their space, and to achieve your goals, and then of course deliver your work. So the only thing you owe them is the commitment payment that you have agreed beforehand to pay them. Also, you don't have to train the staff. It is because freelancers most times have to source for self-development by themselves, so you do not have to pay. You don't have to pay to train them, except in special cases where you have other arrangements with these employees. Also, all of this leads to cheaper cost of running your business, which at the end of the day is, are you making profit? If that is the case, all well and good, because if freelancers achieve your aim for you, why not? And this form of staffing method is mostly what architects are, they are kind of in tune to these days, because of the flexibility rather that comes with it. And on the downward side for the employer is that you may not be able to build a consistent culture in your office. And as such, your project may not always turn out the same. For example, let me use visualization as an example. Because you have not, the hands are not the same, the ideologies are not the same. You keep using freelancers here and there. They all have different school of thought. One, they have different expertise. They have different ways they perceive stuff and all. If they are not working from the same place, you tend to have various outputs. Yeah, your work might still be good, but the fact that it is not coming from the same source tend to make it inconsistent. So your culture might not be consistent, and the quality of your work may not also be consistent because of that same reason. Then you may experience slow delivery in your projects because you have to sometimes chase them. And if a freelancer tells you, sorry, Oga, I'm busy, you have to look for another person who will do the work for you. So slow delivery, and then your company may have stunted growth. You may have stunted growth because of all these issues. You are just doing work. You are not building. Yeah, you may be making money on the side, but Sometimes, yes, we know that making money is an indicator that your business is growing, but at the same time, how solid are you on the back end, really? That's one of the things that count. So we covered all the advantages and disadvantages for the employer of a freelancing staff. Now let's look at the freelancer itself. What are the advantages? If you're a freelancer, you become the master of your own fate, as you can always choose which project to take and which project not to take. Meaning that you are not cooked up in one box all day. You can decide, hey, it's 2 o'clock. I don't feel like working right now. I'm not taking any job again this week. Let me just go and cruise, Of course, we know the downside of that. Hunger will catch you, but yeah, but it's doable. You become the master of your own fate. Now, also, you have control of your time to do it as you please. So if you decide that, okay, for the next 1 month, I'm not going to take project from Render Like a Pro, for example, or I'm not going to take a project from SILL Designs or from Chrono Studios. I just want to be free from doing anything. It's your time. You can choose to do as you please. Then also you get to work with as many employers as possible. So the freelancer sometimes gains experience from, here and there. If you work for Mr. A, and their pattern of work is kind of explained to you. You pick 1 or 2 things. You work for Mr. B. You gain a wide range of experiences working for different employers. Also, your finances is not tied to one employer. What that means is that you, at the end of the month, if Mr. B is broke, doesn't mean you have to be broke. As a freelancer, well, the freelancing job is quite attractive in modern day times because you are responsible for your own learning and development. Basically, you are constantly trying to improve yourself, to attract better pay from your different employers. So, of course, you have to develop yourself. But the downside to this is you are constantly on delivery and deadlines, and that pressure can be stressful. Now, yes, you can pick your own time by yourself, you can work, but the truth is this. If you have 2, 3, 4 projects, you find out that sometimes even the freelancer is looking for who to employ. Yeah, I've seen it happen times and times again. I have a couple of people in recent times going into freelancing as a full-time job themselves. At the end of the day, they turn out becoming an employer of labor of another freelancer. So it is what it is really. So due to how projects come, it takes extra discipline to plan yourself. The truth is this, freelancing in itself isn't easy. Yes, it is attractive and all of that, but the truth is there are downsides to it too. If you are not disciplined, if you don't take charge, it is sometimes hard to plan yourself because one, there is no structured salary. You get what comes to you at the end of the month. And sometimes it's rosy, sometimes it's not. So as a freelancer, it takes extra effort to develop, that mindset to say, yes, this is a full-time job for me as well. So if you have that discipline, well, all well and good. But if you do not have it, I would say that freelancing might not be for you. Now, once you start getting gigs, majority of freelancers tend to, have stunted growth as well because, they're just doing the same thing. Now, I'll use a classic example. I was having a conversation with my co-founder, architect Adeolua, and he made mention of something very profound. He said, look at people who work on Fiverr. Most of them seem to be growing. Yes, I know a couple of registered architects who work on Fiverr. They get jobs, they get gigs, and tons of students. But the downside I see is that they do the same thing over and over and over because quality really is just people just want quick thing. Let me get this thing, let me get it fast. It's sometimes they just keep repeated tasks and they don't grow. Yeah, freelancing is very rosy sometimes. But except you have that discipline and you have the consciousness that this is a full-time job, freelancing may not be for you. So that's all about that for freelancers and people who employ freelancers. So we'll move on to the next one, which is the pay per service. Now, the pay per service, which I like to call the PPS. PPS is a method, this is a fairly old concept, yes, but it is a concept where the employee is a staff of the company, but is paid on a per delivery basis. Meaning that, you work for SILL Designs, right? you work for SILL Designs, but even though you come to work every day, you only get paid on commission and based on what you have done. It's somewhat of a bridge between the full employment and the freelancing. However, unlike the freelancing and full employment, it has the specs of time and all of that. So what does the PPS hold for the employer? The employer of labor only gets to pay commissions from works that is completed by staff on the PPS contract. Now, if I have a job worth, for example, a design job worth 10 million naira, and based on our commission agreement, you get to collect, say, 12% or say 15% or even 20%. At the end of the day, you might do 5 of those design jobs in a month, which of course might spill over into the other months, but as often as possible, the jobs that you do will determine how much you earn. So there's no fixed salary scale that is used in the PPS form of staffing. Then, of course, the employer may or may not pay allowances or paid leave. It is left to how the agreement is structured, and the pay per service staffing method is kind of flexible, because at the end of the day, the employer could choose for a whole month to let the employee, go home and not even do anything at all, and it's still a staff. So that's more like the bridge between the paid employment, the freelancing, and the full employment method. And also, training of staff is on a need-to basis. So you get to save the extra money. Unlike full-time employment, where the employer has to train these people, the employer does not necessarily have to, except of course you are willing to spend the extra money. But if not, you can save it. Then you share the risk of the project with the employee. And the reason is this: since their commission is based on a percentage of how much comes at the end of the day, you tend to want to share that profit, share the commission after the profit is made. For example, if the person the client who has given you a project is owing you, for example, that risk is not borne by you alone, because at the end of the day, the person who works for you knows that this check hasn't come in, so they are not expecting their cut until the check clears. So when you are paid advance, you pay a commission fee to them. This is how much has come in, this is your own fee. So most times it's a very open method of employment. And also, unlike the freelancing method, the staff has to report to your workspace for the duration of that particular task. So, unlike the freelancing where you can be in your house at 2 a.m., at 2 p.m. drinking coffee and just playing game, this case, most times you have to report to the location of the job and say, you have to be there for the duration of the time. And a typical example of this type of employment is an architectural firm that hires a specific architect with specific skill sets, for example, in construction, to help them manage a construction project. And after the project is, say, completed, they either move the person to another project or wait until another arrangement, comes up. So basically, the PPS method kind of pays the employer as well, but not so much as the employee, because when there is no work, the person who is under the PPS agreement is sometimes just useless. It's just there. So what does it hold for the employee itself? Now, it gives a room for the employee to grow through working for different employers, just as in the case for the freelance. And unlike the freelancing though, you make use of the employer's resources to achieve the aim of the project. Meaning that sometimes when a project comes up, it is the resources of the employer that you get to use, unlike the freelancing. And due to the fact that you have some free time once in a while, self-development can be achieved. Meaning that you can focus on self-growth for a specific time, because, this time I'm not doing this, but I'm going back to work once work comes. Now, the more work you do, the more you earn. It is pay as you go, some sort of sense. Now, also, you may not be entitled to allowances. A downside, or you may never have a leave. Just like the entrepreneur who started, that is somewhat of what you are. You may never have paid leave or allowances, and you will not have a structured salary arrangement except when you work. Meaning that in a month you may go home with nothing. Of course, it means that month you didn't do anything. This, of course, means you will not have job security or paid pension, or in other words, you will be on your own. Think about it. You don't get to do a job for a whole month. At the end of the month, you're probably going to be on your own. But of course, just like the freelancing, you tend to want to be creative. You tend to create more ways of surviving, because at the end of the day, your creative side will kick in, because hunger will catch you. So yeah, that is basically all about the paid per service method of staffing. So the last one is what we'll be dealing with shortly. But before that, let's take a message from our sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Render Like a Pro. Render Like a Pro is a 3D visualization learning platform where students can learn to hone their artistic skills and be taught by one of the best group of visualizers in Africa. Render Like a Pro has both the monthly and the yearly subscription that is easy on your pocket as you learn. You can visit www.renderlikeapro.com to check out the services, reviews, and see how Render Like a Pro can help you. The website is www.renderlikeapro.com. Alright guys, welcome back. So, what we are discussing today is the 4 staffing methods for architects. And we have been able to cover 3 of those 4, namely the full-time employment, we talked about freelancing, and we talked about the PPS, which is pay per service method of staffing. Now the last one is somewhat of a method that is not so popular, but of course, with the current trend of things, people are being creative with how they do things. So the last one, of course, like I mentioned before, is the loaning method. Now, the concept of loaning a staff is very new, and this somewhat works like in the football world, where you have 2 clubs, you have players, and it's something of that nature. Now, the concept is, is very new, like I stated. However, the idea stems from the need to collaborate more, as architects on projects. Now, a typical example of this is when a firm forms a partnership with other firms to carry out a project, and the staff of both firms, both of the firms have to work together under one umbrella to achieve, the project, the goals of that project. Now, the loaning method is practiced currently on a low key, like people that I know do it. It's maybe once, twice, or 3 times that I've seen this happen. And it also happened to us. So I'll be using our own case study at the end of the day. Now, it's a whole new idea where people, sometimes require help from each other. You reach out, and it's sometimes from trusted people. Now, how does it work? I'll simply just break it down. Company A is a startup, while Company B is somewhat of a mid-sized, mid-range firm with a couple of staff. But the owners of A and B, of course, have to know themselves for them to trust themselves to go ahead with that kind of arrangement. So, Company A, being the startup, has a new project, right? And the owner of Company A realizes that, I don't think I have the expertise of this, but I also do not have the financial muscle to hire someone now. So what does he do? He reaches out to his friend in Company B and says, okay, I've seen your work, I've seen how you guys work. Could you loan me Mr. Easy, for example, who works for you? Now, the arrangement is sort of flexible. Sometimes the end product or the profit is shared between Company A and Company B, owners of the firm. Now, he might arrange and say, okay, at the end of the project, I'll give you 20% of whatever I get. But the salary of Mr. Easy is still being paid by, Company B's owner. That's the employer who employed. The status still remains the same, but at the same time, you are just reporting to a different location as if it was your project. Basically, you report there, you do what you need to do, but you are not getting any direct benefit from that project except when the arrangement states so. However, the owner of company B as well as the owner of company A, having decided on the terms of their agreement, will simply just carry out the project. You use you as the employee to do the work, and at the end of the day, they sort out themselves. So the arrangement could go in different ways as far as two people are in agreement. So that's somewhat how it works. Now, a real life example is where we have a client who we do high-end visualization for and render like a pro, and in the course of working for them, they looked at it and said, okay, you guys train architects, right? I said, yes. Okay, let me send down one of our staff to come do tutelage under you guys for a month. Don't worry, you stay in a different city. I will simply just pay for the person's accommodation. I'll pay for the person's feeding. All you have to do is let the person just come and work for you. We'll retain the person's salary and every other thing. And that was the arrangement. So it depends on what is on the table. The loaning method is, I feel that when people have agreed, it is beneficial because at the end of the day, there's no fixed method. This is architecture. There has to be creativity. There's no fixed way of doing things. So people tend to be creative with how they make their business work. So guys, that brings us to the end of the conversation for today. At SILL Designs, we combine option 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4, that is the loan method. It happens once or twice, but the other 3 is somewhat of a constant thing where we have freelancers at our beck and call. We have people who pay per service who come to work every day. We have full-time staff as well. So basically, it depends on what tickles your fancy, what makes your project move, what makes your delivery deadlines, what makes you meet them. So let me hear from you. How have you been able to incorporate this? Is there another method that you use that you might want us to discuss? Please kindly reach out. Let us discuss it. Let us learn from each other and see how best we can standardize our practice. Because like I always say, architects basically are in the business of providing housing solutions. How you achieve that legally also is very important. The processes you use in achieving your objective as a firm, achieving your growth as a company is also very, very important. So let's learn from each other. Drop comments below. Let me hear from you. What are the methods you combine? It's it the full-time employment that works for you, or you work from the comfort of your home as a freelancer? Let me hear from you and let's get this conversation going. Thank you guys. Thank you for sticking with me till the end. And until I come your way again on the next episode, we are dishing out quality content again. I remain your host, Architect Egbenyon Leonard, and this is SILL Talks.